Hello, I'm Tony Hay, co-founder of Responsible Investor. Welcome to this ESG Leaders interview with Marie Dzanis, who is Head of Asset Management, EMEA at Northern Trust Asset Management. Marie, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Tony. It's great to be here.
Great. Okay, today's topic of discussion is diversity, equity and inclusion, or DE&I for short. Marie, DE&I is becoming more and more of a focus for both asset owners and asset managers. What do you think of the drivers behind this?
Well, as someone who's a big believer personally in diversity and is diverse myself, it's intuitive. But the industry is waking up to a few things. Diversity is a systemic inequality issue, and especially problematic in the financial sector. Research shows that in the wider financial sector, sadly, only 20% of women are on executive committees, 23% are on boards across almost 500 financial institutions in 37 countries, and fewer than 1 in 10 management roles in the financial services industry are held by Black, Asian, or minority ethnic people. But we're waking up to this. There are social drivers. We saw how the world reacted to the murder of George Floyd, and this generated awareness and urgency to create and improve quality and achieve better representation of society in our demographics of business. And also, there's a very strong case in business for diversity. We've all heard that diverse companies outperform better than their less diverse peers, but firms that are in the top quartile for racial and ethnic diversity are actually 35% more likely to have financial returns above their industry average. And companies in the top quartile for gender diversity are 15% more likely to have financial returns above their industry average. And if we look here in the UK, greater gender diversity on the senior executive team makes the biggest difference. Findings suggest that for every 10% of increase in gender diversity, operating profit rises by 3.5% to 4%. So there are a lot of reasons why this is urgent.
Indeed, you'd think it would be an open and shut case based on those statistics. But turning to the rubber hits the road question, to what extent is it becoming a win-lose manager selection component?
Well, institutional asset owners and consultants appreciate the business case for diversity, and they want to know that the asset managers that are investing on their behalf actually are demonstrating commitments to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So they're expecting it. It's not just about the selection criteria. It's about an ongoing expectation of leadership in this space. And so we see more and more questions in due diligence questionnaires and on RFPs, and the trend is actually very strong in the UK. We have initiatives such as the Asset Owner Diversity Working Group that provides charts and guidelines, and it has two key components that they look at. One is Asset Manager Diversity Inclusion Questionnaire, which aims to standardize complex diversity metrics just beyond gender to improve on disclosures. And the second component is the Asset Owner Toolkit. It's a charter toolkit that helps demonstrating implementation on critical topics such as manager monitoring and selection. So all of these things are critical to how a company looks and interacts with us, and we have the duty to hold ourselves accountable to very high standards.
Okay, all right. So it sounds like it should be a no-brainer, and yet the asset management industry seems to be behind the curve. It's certainly seen as being behind the curve. You mentioned it yourself. How does Northern Trust Asset Management compare to the rest of the sector, would you say?
Well, I would say we're proud of the commitment we have to be on this journey towards having a robust and diverse set of contributions where people bring their full selves to work and they're empowered to act. We as a firm have made some progress and continue to commit on prioritizing this in our business globally. If we look at the Northern Trust Asset Management Executive Committee, it's 61% gender, racial, and ethnically diverse. For the US, our population of people, we have 28.3% people of color representation. And for the UK, we have 15.3% Black, Asian, and minority ethnic. If you look at our investment team, we often get asked this in our clients and in questionnaires. We have in the UK 25% BAME, and in the US 29% people of color. And zooming out at the entire organization level, the Northern Trust Corporation board has people of color of 39%. So as I said, it's a very good start, because the entire industry needs to be looking at these metrics and looking at their population together. It's something that we all have to get right. And when you do, diversity truly wins.
Okay. How have you managed to achieve this? I mean, how did you get there?
So as a result of a global diversity and inclusion strategic assessment we undertook in 2019, we developed our DE&I strategy to address a lot of different things on how we can improve our diversity overall. And it sought to do get three outcomes. How can we better drive accountability? How can we enhance and develop programs and placement? And how do we advance culture? So if we think about driving accountability, this created a bespoke DE&I dashboard, which enable us to track progress and metrics as it relates to hiring and retention and promotion. And we have a strong governance model as part of the Drive accountability component. Our Global Executive DE&I Leadership Council is responsible for the strategic oversight and defining our accountability and our priorities. And the council is co-chaired by our CEO of Northern Trust and the Executive Vice President and Head of Corporate Social Responsibility and DE&I. And from there, it cascades down. We have regional business unit, country level DE&I councils, which are chaired by senior leaders with oversight from chief diversity officers. On our second priority, to enhance development programs and placement, it means that we all have to do work to support the development of diverse talent at all levels in the organization. So for example, in EMEA, we host a variety of programs. We have a diverse leaders program. We have lean-in circles for junior female talent. We have cross-company talent accelerator programs and the like. And then on the third point of the strategic priority to advance culture, this includes the work of our business resource councils. So in EMEA, we have 9 business resource councils, and the personal executive sponsor for our Black Business Resource Council and for our Latin Heritage Business Resource Council. And so we continue things with training. We have mental health in the workplace to create a culture that encourage open and authentic conversations between teams and managers. And we do have a number of mandatory training sessions that we also offer for employees related to unconscious bias and inclusive leadership. So this takes a lot of steps in holistic consideration, but it's also important that the leaders, as well as every level of the organization, is involved and committed to this.
Okay. And have you implemented a strategy or targets, from the recruitment or promotion point of view? How does that work?
So in addition to the frameworks that I had just mentioned, we have introduced deliberate gender focus on hiring senior level people as of 2018. So we increased female hiring at our most senior level, senior vice president in EMEA, from 33% to 55%. And this aligns with already being a signatory in the UK Women in Finance Charter. In 2019, we developed more inclusive job descriptions and implemented mandatory hiring manager training to remove biases from job advertisements and improve our overall training and hiring process. But also, we expect and review that we have a diverse slate of candidates across all of the region for every role that we hire, and also have a diverse slate of interviewers as well, which makes a very big difference on how we're thinking about talent and getting the right people in that are going to succeed in our organization, and we embrace them well.
Okay, so thinking about all of those things and putting them together, it's great to be doing this internally, but how does it impact your business or client relationships or prospects? Are you seeing a positive impact there as a result of doing this?
It is positive. We serve all different types of clients with different types of investments, but it's also wonderful to see where firms are in their various stages of their own journey of embracing DE&I and where we can help. And you get to participate alongside a community. So I'm also personally involved with leading changes in our organization and the industry more broadly. And firms pay attention to the types of engagement that you have. So we have a Women in Finance initiative. I'm the executive sponsor, as I said, for some business resource councils, but I'm also our global sponsor as the firm for LGBT Great. So we also co-sponsored industry-leading research on how diversity in the LGBTQ space can impact investments, and it's one of the first of its kind. But you need to be doing things like this in the industry. We need to have a voice, and clients do pay attention to this. They look at how genuine your efforts are in this space, the initiatives that you support, and the industry representatives that you put forward, the types of spokespeople that you have. They all watch carefully to make sure that firms are walking the talk. And a key trend that's going to perpetuate this is the younger generation. When we think by 2035 is going to be the largest wealth transfer for younger generations to inherit money, they are going to invest. They are going to be with firms. They are going to vote with their values. So their investment and their personal values must coexist. So I'm very encouraged that the investment community is on a positive trend. We've just got a lot more work to do.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so continuing this sort of look outwards, as it were, moving on from clients, in terms of the investments that Northern Trust Asset Management is making, do you see DE&I as being a positive driver of company performance?
Absolutely. We talked about the ways that diversity at the leadership table and corporate boards can make a company excel. But the other question is regarding their investments. And so during COVID, there were some definite proof points that resonated with investors that not only the social agenda is important in ESG, but it plays a much bigger role in success. So if you consider for ESG, we all noticed during COVID that the environment saw trade-offs, that when we didn't commute and have as much trains and planes and the like. We actually had dolphins come back into the Venice canals. The G in governance, we saw firsthand how operational resilience kept the lights on during market duress. But the S really took rise in the forefront of social issues and equality. And here's the thing. Companies that have very deliberate paths to be effective and measure the environment impact they have, the carbon footprint they leave on the community and the world, if they have well-run businesses that have process and solid business continuity, and in the S, they have diversity at the leadership table, they make great decisions, they have solid definition on fair workplace environments and reward the right kind of behavior, that could be, as an investment opportunity, that could be as a company, an indicator of a well-run company. And so that's how this is resonating differently with investors.
Okay, so you'll obviously come across companies where you think they're laggards or they're behind. How do you engage companies on DE&I?
So we leverage the deep client relationships to understand what's important to their beliefs and have frequent discussions on their priorities. And as I've said before, the long-term financial returns of companies are connected to their strategic ESG performance. So we want to be able to influence specific companies' policies and practices to help them demonstrate a consistent commitment to sustainability. And DE&I is one of our key stewardship ways and key stewardship priorities. We spend a lot of time on the promotion of it. So for example, DE&I and strengthening board diversity are one of several ones that we have that we're focusing on. And promoting a culture of inclusion in the workforce and executive ranks has a profound impact on a company. Board diversity yields a strong mix of skills and backgrounds with corporate boards. And we push to improve the quality of their workforce diversity by reporting to include not just qualitative, but quantitative metrics of diversity, equity, and inclusion across different levels of employment. So last year we withheld support from 780 individual director nominees at companies that lacked board diversity. And this included a number of votes against directors in the S&P 500 for lack of ethnic and racial diversity and poor disclosure of ethnic and racial diversity.
Okay.
And this year, our proxy committee raised our minimum diversity requirements, placing much more pressure on companies to further diversify their boards. So we set a standard that all boards globally must be 20% female, and boards in the US have to have at least one ethnically or racially diverse director.
Okay. So you're putting pressure on the companies. Do they buy into it? Are you seeing more commitments from the companies you engage with to speed up, accelerate DE&I?
Yes, last year, few firms had shareholder resolutions on DE&I, and already in February this year, there was more than 60 different shareholder resolutions on this issue that's been filed. And we expect a lot more. So in voting on shareholder resolutions, we take into consideration the level of disclosure companies already have and their ability to provide diversity at the workforce, management, and board levels, and show that in metrics, as well as qualitative descriptions of how their company is making efforts to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Okay. And what can the industry do more to accelerate the agenda?
Thematically, we need better data and better measurements, as I was talking about qualitative and quantitative measurements of that. Also, I think a big important theme is globally local regulations. Certain countries do not allow measurement or producing metrics around ethnic minorities, and we would urge local regulators to take a look at that and help change that.
Okay, that's an interesting one. So finally, if there's one aspect of diversity, equality, and inclusion that you could change today, what would you do if you could wave your magic wand?
Couple things. Besides more diversity, it's about getting that perspective and giving it a voice. The higher up you go in the management ranks, the more things are done on the nuance. And nuance and radical change might have a hard time coexisting. And in my opinion, firms need to ask themselves, does my culture allow for different thinking? Does it allow for people to challenge my process and my values and bring completely different insights to the executive table? And only when we allow change can we evolve for the better. Second, I think we need to ask tough questions as a firm and as an industry. Do we lose diverse people after a certain amount of tenure? Do we promote at the same rates? What infrastructure do we need to have in place to ensure that diversity succeeds? And lastly, I'd urge people to have open conversations. Sometimes as leaders, you want to appear buttoned up and have all the answers, but I believe there's a new level of leadership required. You have to be empathetic and agile and have to be vulnerable and be willing to evolve to get things right. And I learned early on that your different can be your highest value, and we need more value to win.
Very good. All right, that's a very good note to end. Marie, thank you very much indeed for your time. I really enjoyed hearing what you've been doing around DE&I and all the trust asset management.